E-Biology class, Fatima Convent High School. Chapter 16, Sustainable Management of Natural Resources. Class 10. Myself, Dipali. We are moving to the next topic of this chapter, that is management of forest resources. We know that how useful are the forest resources and how they give benefit to the people living near the forest as well as away from the forest according to the priority and according to their requirement, and how they have their shares in the forest products. Now let us see how to manage this resource. Now we need to consider if the goals of all the above stakeholders with regard to the management of forests are the same. Forest resources are often made available for industrial use at the rate far below the market value while they are denied to local people. So, what does this mean? We know that each and every person holds the same share towards this natural resource. But due to certain reasons, few are getting more benefits of these resources and others are getting less. One of the movement to fight out this injustice was the Chipko Andolan, that is Hug the Trees movement. It was the result of the grassroots level effort of end the alienation of people from their forest. The movement originated from an incident in a remote village called Rani in Garhwal. High up in the Himalayas during the early 1970s, there was a dispute between the local villagers and the logging contractor who had been allowed to fell the trees. So here the logging contractor was getting more benefit over the local people, and he was destroying or they were destroying the environmental balance. So the trees in the forest close to the village. On a particular day, the contractor's workers appeared in the forest to cut the trees when the men folk were absent. Undeterred, the women of the village reached the forest quickly and collapsed the tree trunk, thus preventing the workers from felling the trees. Thus, thwarted, the contractor had to withdraw because they were ready to give up their life to protect the trees. Inherent in such a competition to control the natural resources is the conservation of replenishable resource. Specifically, the method of use was being called into question. The contractor could have felled the trees, destroyed them forever. The communities traditionally lop the branches and pluck the leaves. It is not that they are not using, but they are using it in a replenishable way because they are allowing the branches and the leaves to grow back and use only that much as its requirement. But the contractors or the industrial people are greedy for the raw material and they keep on getting more out of it and trying to get the maximum benefit of these resources. And so, in return, they destroy the resources completely. The Chipko movement quickly spread across communities and media and forced the government to whom the forest belongs to rethink their priorities in the use of forest produces. Experience has taught people that destruction of forest affects not only the availability of forest products but also the quality of soil and resources of water. Part- Participation of local people can indeed lead to efficient management of the forest. So, this way we can manage and protect and conserve the forest. An example of people's participation in the management of forest in 1972, the West Bengal Forest Department recognized its failure in reviving the degraded sal forest in the southern western district of the state. Traditional methods of surveillance and policies had led to a complete alienation of people from the administration, resulting in frequent clashes between forest officials and villagers. Forest and land related conflicts in the region were also a major factor in fueling the militant peasants' movement led by the Naxalites. Accordingly, the Forest Department changed its strategy, making a beginning in the Arbari forest ranges of Midnapore district. Here, at the instance of a far seeing forest officer, A.K. Banerjee, villagers were involved in the protection of 1272 hectares of badly degraded sal forest. In return for the help in protection, villagers were given employment in both silviculture and harvesting operations. 25% of the final harvest and allowed fuel wood and fodder collection on the payment of nominal fees. With the activity and willing participation of the local community, the Sal forest of Arbari underwent a remarkable recovery, and by 1983, a previously worthless forest was valued for 12.5 crores. So you can imagine how just a little management or how just a little work of effort can protect so many important resources for us. Now let us see the next topic, that is water for all. We all know that water is a very important component or substance in our life. We cannot survive without water, and most of our activities from day to day and internal body activities also are due to water. So, what is there to talk about here? Now, we know that water is the basic necessity for all terrestrial forms of life. We studied in class 9th about the importance of water as resource, the water cycle and how human intervention pollutes water bodies. However, human intervention also changes the availability of water in various regions. After the above activities, would you be very surprised to learn that regions of water scarcity are closely correlated to the regions of acute poverty? A study of rainfall pattern does not reveal the whole truth behind water availability in various regions in India, because just getting enough rain is not the exact amount of water which will be available throughout the year. You might get enough water, but is that water being stored, or is it running off into the oceans and seas which cannot be reused until it goes through the water cycle? So, we need to see that this water has to be stored, and then only the rain which has rained enough is opt for the whole year use. This means that most of the rainfall in few months of the year, despite nature's monsoon bounty, failure to sustain water availability underground has resulted largely from the loss of vegetation cover, because no trees and so no water percolation into the soil, and so the ground level water is decreasing. Diversions for high water demanding crops and pollution from industrial effluents and urban wastes. Irrigation methods like dams, tanks, and canals have been used in various parts of India since ancient times. These were generally local interventions managed by local people and assured that basic minimum requirement for both agriculture and daily needs were met throughout the years. The use of this stored water was strictly regulated, and optimum cropping pattern based on water availability were arrived at a basis of decades century of experience. The maintenance of these irrigation system was also a local affair. So you can see how people were trying to manage this water, which was a bounty of rain, and we were enjoying it. But after the arrival of Britishers, the British changed the system as it changed many other things. The conception of large scale projects, large dams, and canals transferred traversing large distances were first convinced and implemented by the British and carried on with no less gusto by our newly formed independent government. These mega projects led to neglect of local irrigation systems, and the government also increasingly took over the administration of this system, leading to the loss of control over local water resources by local people. So you can see how these small things were neglected over the large ones and what was their effect. Now let us first talk about the kuls in Himachal Pradesh. Now what are these kuls? Now parts of Himachal Pradesh had evolved a local system of canal irrigation called kuls over 400 years ago. The water flowing in the streams were diverted into man-made canals which took this water to numerous villages down the hillside. The management of water flowing in these schools was by common agreement among all the villages. Interestingly, during the plantation season, water was first used by the village farthest away from the source of coals, then by villages progressively higher up. These schools were managed by two or three people who were paid by the villagers. In attention to irrigation, water from these schools also percolated into the soil and fed the springs at various points. After the schools were taken over by the irrigation department, most of them became defunctioned and there were no amicable sharing of water as before. So they were almost useful and the whole system of schools in Himachal Pradesh failed. Now let us see what are dams. We know that dams are a very big building reservoirs which are constructed nowadays over big rivers to check the flow of excess water and to generate electricity. Now why do we seek to build a dam? Large dams can ensure the storage of adequate water not just for irrigation but also for generating electricity. As discussed in the previous chapter, canal system leading from these dams can transfer large amount of water over great distance. For example, the Indira Gandhi Canal was brought, has brought greenery to considerable areas of Rajasthan. So, we all know about Indira Gandhi Canal, which is in the Rajasthan and has made Rajasthan greener. However, mismanagement of water has largely led to the benefits being cornered by a few people. There is no equitable distribution of water. These people close to the sources grow water intensive crops like sugarcane and rice, while people further downstream do not get any water. The woes of these people who have been promised benefits were never arrived as are added to the discontentment among the people who have been displaced by the building of dams and in canal network. So we can see that the water which was just flowing away ruthlessly into the ocean or into the sea without being used has been stored in these large dams and various other places around it are being made available with this water, but there are disadvantages of this as well. Now, many of them, the people are promised to move away from their native places, which are on the way either in the flow of the water from the dams or in the dams, and they have to leave their homes and move away. And because of that, they have discontentment. But they are not given proper benefits after they are promised. So, in the previous chapter, we mentioned the reason for opposition to construct the large dams, such as the Tarhai Dam on River Ganga. Why? Because people were not given enough benefits after they were promised. You must have read about the protest by the Narmada Bachao Andolan, Save the Narmada movement, about raising the height of Sardar Sarovar Dam on River Narmada. Criticisms about large dam addresses three problems in particular. Social problems, because by displace large number of peasants and tribal without adequate compensation and rehabilitation. So because of this, what is happening? They are not able to get what they want. Economic problems, because they swallow up huge amount of public money without generation of proportionate benefits. And third is environmental problems, because they contribute enormously to deforestation and the loss of biological diversities. So, these are the three main criticisms which are brought forward due to the construction of dams. The people who have been displaced by various development projects are largely poor tribals who do not get any benefits from these projects and are alienated from their lands and forests without adequate compensation. The outseas of the Tawa Dam, built in 1970s, are still fighting for the benefits they were promised. So you can see that after years or ages have passed, yet they have not been given the benefits. Now, the water, which is a precious resource, has to be harvested. We know that we harvest a crop after it has been ripened. But what about the water? How can we harvest water? And what is water harvesting? Now, watershed management emphasizes scientific soil and water conservation in order to increase the biomass production. The aim is to develop primary resources of land and water, to produce secondary resources of plants and animals for use in a manner which will not cause ecological imbalance. So, what are we trying to do? That primary source resources of land and water are produced from secondary sources, and so that there is no imbalance. Watershed management not only increases the production and income of watershed community but also mitigates drought and flood and increase the life of downstream dams and reservoirs. So water harvesting is important to avoid drought and flood, as it is like saving the water when you have extra and utilizing the water when you don't have. So various organization has been working on rejuvenating ancient systems of water harvesting as an alternative to the mega projects like dam. These communities have used hundreds of indigenous water saving methods to capture every trickle of water that has fallen on their land. How did they do that? They dug small pits and lakes, put in place simple watershed system, built small earthen dams, constructed dikes and limestone reservoirs, set up rooftop water collecting units. So this is how the falling rainwater or the extra water which is coming to them is collected. And this has recharged the groundwater level and even brought rivers back to life. So you can see how it is benefiting the life. Now, water harvesting is an age old concept in India. Kandis, tanks, and nadis in Rajasthan, bandharas and tals in Maharashtra, bandis in Madhya Pradesh and Uttar Pradesh, aharas and painis in Bihar, Kuls in Himachal Pradesh, ponds in Kandi belt of Jammu region, and Aries tank in Tamil Nadu, Suranganams in Kerala, and Kathas in Karnataka are some of the ancient water harvesting systems. So you can see how people have been harvesting water in different methods, which are very simple physical methods, including water conveyance structures still in use today. Water harvesting techniques are highly local specific and the benefits also localized. So they are very small simple techniques as I told you, but they are very much useful to the local people at low cost. Giving people control over their local water resources ensures that mismanagement and overexploitation of these resources is reduced and removed. So you can see how these water resources are protected and preserved. Now let us see what about a waterman. Who is this waterman? A traditional technology in helping India's waterman save thousands of parched villages and transformed the lives of thousands of villagers in one of the India's most arid region. It took decades of efforts of Dr. Rajendra Singh, 8,600 johads and other structures to collect water has been built in Rajasthan and water has been brought back to a 1,000 village across states. In 2015, he won the Stockholm Water Prize. It is the most prestigious award which honors a person who contributes to conservation and protection of water resources for the well-being of the planet and its inhabitant. So you can see how his simple effort of protecting water has benefited. Now let us see what happens to the terrains. In largely level terrains, the water harvesting structures are mainly crescent-shaped earthen embankments or low, straight concrete and rubble check dams built across seasonally flooded gullies. Monsoon rain fills ponds behind the structure. Only the largest structure holds water year around. Most dry up 6 months or less after the monsoon. These main purpose, however, is not to hold surface water but to recharge the groundwater benefits. So, when it is stagnant water at particular place in a pond or a lake, the water is going to percolate down into the soil, recharging the soil water. The advantages of water stored in the ground are many. It does not evaporate but spreads out to recharge wells and provides moisture for vegetations over a wide area. In addition, it does not provide breeding grounds for mosquitoes like stagnant water collected in ponds and artificial lakes. The groundwater is also relatively protected from contamination by human and animal waste. So we can see what are the benefits of groundwater. That it does not evaporate. It does not provide breeding ground for mosquitoes and it is protected from contamination by man and human waste. So you can see the diagram here which shows us the groundwater, how it is collected into the ground. The trees are holding this water flow which is coming from rain. That is the catchment area. And because of this, it is going to flow slowly towards the khadins or the cropped areas where the water will seep through with the help of roots of the plants. Now there is a khadin band, that is a check dam, which does not allow this water to just flow into the saline area. And because of this, the water percolates inside the soil and it gets collected at this low-lying area which is shallow dug well. And so, in spite of saline water at this place, you have pure, fresh drinking water, and which can be utilized by either pumping it out or by draining it out by various methods. So, this is how we can protect our important resource of water. Thank you. Next part we will be studying about coal and petroleum.